The words writing workshop might now just be another way of saying chaos or ineffective. And you're not alone. A lot of people feel that way. There's just been some shifts and changes over the years that have sort of gotten us away from our core purpose for doing a workshop. I mean, people love the idea of it. It probably just it didn't do what it promised that it would do in the beginning. And I want to talk about how workshop itself and the idea of it actually isn't the problem. It's the structure that we put into the workshop that can help it become far, far more effective. So, in this episode, I'm going to walk you through the 5 things that I did to change my workshop to make it feel more consistent, more clear, more supportive, and actually like a lot more fun. I'm going to talk to you about how to fix your workshop and not abandon it, and then how we're going to pull some things apart, like separate some things out. You may have used units of study in the past. You might still use it. In the beginning, there was a lot of it that we all loved. We loved student choice. We loved that there was ownership of it. And we loved that there was real, authentic writing time. And there was a push for conferences and using mentor texts, and all of those things were great and they still matter. We should still do them. But the lessons themselves started to get maybe watered down or not targeted. And even when I looked up in one of the recent units of study books, not to bash it, but here we go. In one of them, I looked up sentence complexity, which for me is the third most important skill in my program. And it was mentioned one time on one page in there, and it said, "This is a complex sentence. Now you try it." Like that was literally it for the lesson. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're not going to be able to learn sentence complexity by here's one, now you do it. Have a good day. That's not how that works. So the students weren't really building toward anything in the workshop. And we were starting to feel like, what are we doing here? And so my theory was that, we're designed to be the coaches. But then what happened is we ended up being everything. We were the ref, the quarterback, the scoreboard keeper. Like it was all about the teacher and not focused on the students. And so how did all this happen? And back in, I think it was 2001, we had the No Child Left Behind Act that came out, and there was a big shift on accountability and student assessment. The money that the schools would receive federally were tied to that. And so achieving high on those standardized tests shifted the focus. And then the state started to realize, well, if we're going to do this, that we don't really have standards that are common around everyone. Everyone was kind of doing different things. So they created these Common Core state standards. And the assessments shifted toward academic writing. And when units of study, when that all started, the workshop, it was more of a stress on narrative writing and poetry writing. And I'm not saying to go back to only that. There needs to be a good balance. But then what happened was to address all of these requirements, units of study, just, it's shifted into these units of study. So there were literally 9-week units on one type of writing genre. And they would study argument and they would work on an argument essay for 9 weeks. And they just had this one output at the end. And so working on that long of a piece of writing, it just zapped the kids' energy and their will to carry on, and probably your will to carry on too. It just didn't match with what we knew a workshop can and should do. So instead, I think what happened was they said, let's call it a workshop because we love that, but we're going to stuff all this other stuff in there with the Common Core standards. No child gets left behind. But take a look at where we're at today. We're struggling still. And even though we have, hired our expectations on their writing, which is good, some of it I'm not sure they're developmentally ready to do, quite honest. But anyway, I'm not in charge of the world. I had to figure out a way to make all this work, or else how can I be a teacher and not make it work, right? So I want to talk about the 5 things that I changed to my program and how they made all the difference. And you're going to notice that of these 5 things, 2 of them relate to the workshop. The other 3 do not, because workshop is nowhere near the only writing that we do. So we're going to jump into change number 1. That is the warm up when the kids come into the classroom. You're getting us started. I used to do one of those, alliterative things where it was like Monday musing and Tuesday things and Wednesday word and Thursday thought, Thursday, whatever, Friday fun. Okay. But it just felt like filler. It was cute. And the kids picked up on that. And they were like, oh, it's Word Wednesday. We weren't moving the ball down the field anymore. The kids weren't getting anywhere with these types of warm-ups, but I was able to take attendance. However, you can still take attendance and have them progress at their skills and get better at ELA at the same time. So I do this I call them the ELA 3 a day. And they have 3 tasks right away. I have one of my students' leaders set a timer for 5 minutes. And this will feel unbelievable to you at first, but your kids will be able to get this done in 5 minutes. The first time you'll be like, oh my gosh, there's no way, but they will. It's really important for them to learn how to do things quickly, efficiently, correctly, without this like slow walk up to it. Because in real life, we're told to do things with a quick turnaround. That's like the definition of America. So they need to get used to that. And there are some kids who can't do it in 5 minutes. And so you'll differentiate for them and you know how to do that. But the 3 things that they do is number 1, sentence combining. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that they'll start to understand and use correct grammar and punctuation when you have them regularly do sentence combining. So I give them 2 basic sentences. They combine them together into a compound sentence. They have to get it perfect to get the point. They have to have the capital letter, the comma, the conjunction. All words have to be spelled correctly because they're right there in front of you. And we do that for 2 months. And I know that feels kind of like blah, but I'll tell you what we do in the other ones, and then this will make sense. So they highlight, you could have them highlight their comma and conjunction, all that. And there's a little checklist with it, and they get used to it. Like, this is what we do. And some of them actually love, like, have you ever had kids who just want to copy stuff off the board? They really love having the sentences there for them that they just need to calmly and quietly figure out how to put them together perfectly. And then after that, we move on to the next task, which is test prep. And there's a multiple choice question. It's typically not super difficult because during that warm up, you want them to just have like to practice the skill and figure it out all on their own. Because first of all, you actually do have to take attendance. We know this. And if the questions are too hard, then they're all like, what is this? I don't know what this is. How do I do this? Next thing you know, you've got way too many questions, chaos, you have behavior problems, they're frustrated. I would never want to frustrate them with a warm-up. The warm-up is to literally warm them up and then get them ready for the day. That's what they're meant to do. So you want questions that are relatively simple, but still attack that standard. So maybe you're doing a simple question about verb tenses or something, and then you do that same skill for the entire week. Focus on one skill. So Friday, you can have a discussion. Then you can say, all right, all week you've been practicing this skill on verb tenses. What do you think you learned from that? What are some rules that we could tell someone if they just walked in here today and they had missed that whole week and you told them they have to do all these questions? What rules would you tell them about verb tenses so that they can remember how to do this? That's constructivist pedagogy I've talked about before. I might do a whole show on that. I love it so much. Where they're having experiences and they're developing their own definitions as they go along. Great for EL learners too. So rather than passively sitting back and waiting for you to tell them the definition or to tell them the rule, that just, it doesn't give them any memory of it. There's no skill building there. So they've combined a sentence, they've done their grammar test prep question, and the third thing is they do a quick write every day. And these are images that are really engaging. They're either funny or weird or dramatic or confusing. There's all these different kinds of moods, and they're all represented, different genres are represented in the quick writes. And I teach them to write scenes and not stories. I need to go into more detail in another podcast about scenes and stories so you can understand the difference between them and explain them to the kids in a way that they're like, oh, okay. So we might do a whole quick write podcast. But this is so magical. You won't even believe how this is going to change your class. Number one, because it builds their voice. And so they're working on voice daily, and their stamina daily. They get faster. They write more. They're able to pivot and respond to any type of genre or prompt that they're given. And they do all of this, believe it or not, in 5 minutes. And they earn 3 points, like one per day. I can't express enough the impact of these warm-ups. It's unusually wild what happens because the picture or the image that's on the quick write that they get every day, they love coming to class just to see what the picture is. So they'll kind of come jogging in like, what is it? What is it? Oh, look at that. Da, da, da. But they can't do it. It's like dessert. They can't do it until they get through the first 2 tasks. So don't let them hop ahead, but they want to so bad, but it helps them practice their fluency. It gets their brain going. They've got repetition. There is routine. You're able to manage your class because the kids actually crave this routine despite what they'll tell you. But when they know what to do every day without having to be told over and over and over and over again, do it. They just come in and they feel more adult. They feel they have more ownership of the classroom because they get you. They get your system. They're like, I got this. So they come directly in. They open up their notebook or their computer. The timer gets started by one of your students. They know exactly what's expected of them. And if you ever have to stop this routine for something, they will freak out. It's so much fun. I love it when they freak out when we change our routine. Don't do it often though. So the second thing that I changed in my workshop was, and when you start this at the beginning of the year, it does take a couple of times a week to get all the wheels turning. But once the workshop is up and off the ground, it's a 1 time a week thing. There are 6 skills that I teach on repeat, and they're in order of importance. The highest priority skill is the one that I give the most attention to. And the top 3 skills are the ones that I would give as much time as you can and come back over and over and over again because you'll get so much bang for your buck with those 3 skills. Sprinkle in the others. You'll hear more about that. You might not agree with me on the order of this, but I personally have played around with this, and this is what I found to be the most effective. So number 1 skill they work on is voice. Then they work on hooks, and then sentence complexity. All 3 of those are very important. High amount of time, attention, because those 3 will help your students pivot into anything and use those skills. So then we head into skill 4, which is figurative language, then vivid imagery, and then show, don't tell. And those last 3 are geared toward narrative writing or creative writing, and they're important because obviously, like, I'm a creative writer. I love those. But those lessons, actually, they can pick up on those a little bit quicker. And the first 3, voice is not meant to be hard, and they actually pick up on that quicker than adults. But that's what develops their confidence. But hooks and sentence complexity, you need to put a lot more time on that. If you put more attention into practicing hooks, I can't tell you how much easier their essay writing is. Because one of the biggest problems when you're doing essay writing is when you say, now you're going to write your hook, make it interesting, intrigue your reader, get their attention. And they're like, what? I have a very specific way that I teach hooks, and they've been practicing this a lot before we get up to it. Again, might do a whole show just on hooks. I'll teach you how I teach them. So those 6 skills we're doing on repeat. And there are times that I will, quote, borrow time from other days in the weeks to go deeper on a skill because I need more time and I want them to practice more and do more independent, like skills-based practice with it, where they're writing stuff over and over again before we move into the workshop. But then during the workshop, the direct instruction time is at 7 minutes because there's research around that. Our capacity to take in information and the amount of time that we can do that. That's why a lot of YouTube videos are about 7 minutes and why phone numbers are 7 digits long. So if you want to keep it short and snappy, you're going to keep it engaging. You'll have great back and forth conversation right before they start writing. So all of this means that there are no surprises about the workshop. There's no surprises in the whole program. I mean, I saw a book one time that said, here are 250 writing strategies. And I was like, this sounds like a nightmare. But in my class, they see a wheel of 6 skills and you move an arrow around it. You can make it however you want, a big poster, or you can just make it digital. Your student leader will move the arrow when you're moving on to that next skill. So the kids see what's coming up, or you might have a discussion and say, I think we're going to continue with this skill for one more week before we move on. We want to go a little bit deeper with this. So we're going to stick with hooks for one more week, something like that. So you're not running around all the time trying to find your next brand new lesson. You know the order of the skills that you're teaching, and you base your instruction on your students' progress, not on a pacing chart that says on this day you need to do this. It's based on how they are progressing with it. And so you might repeat things because they need it, or move ahead more quickly because they got it. They really love this routine because they actually know, like they love knowing what's coming up. They don't like it when you suddenly just say, okay, and now today we're going to learn how to do this really complex thing. It freaks them out. Now, those were the first 2 things that I would change. And just because I'm going to be really opinionated here, those are non-negotiables for me. So if you ever decided that you wanted to give the program a try, these things that I'm talking about today, these are marching orders. These are things that you will have to do in order to get the results that I'm telling you you can get. Because it's not like, when if you do a new diet and you're like, well, I'm just going to do 25% of the suggestions that they do. And then you say, well, that diet doesn't work. That you didn't do the diet. So to get the program to work how it should, you want to do these 5 parts that are non-negotiable. So again, the first one was ELA 3 a day. Number 2 was having a workshop that focuses on 6 skills. Third one, using leaders during the workshop. I'm not going to just let this go. I will keep saying this. It's so huge. It changes the temperature in your room. I mean, this idea came to me years ago. My son, I drove him to baseball practice, and I let him out. Bye, have a good night. And he ran out there to meet his teammates. I'm sitting in the car in the parking lot watching, and he runs up and stands next to this other kid, and the 2 of them lead the entire team in their warm-ups. Touch your toes. Do this, do that. My son never even told me that he was one of the co-captains. He was just like so excited to have this responsibility. And the coach was off over in the field, like setting up the bases and getting all the gear and the equipment ready for them. The kids were fine and they were so happy. And I realized like they're capable of so much more than we can even imagine. So the leadership roles really help. And I literally have kids come in early. The leaders set up the lights and the music and the timer and the digital spinner and your dares and all the things. And so they are managing on their side. And on your side, you are metaphorically putting the bases out and getting the equipment ready and doing what you need to do to help support them. And then kids have other roles. So like in their trios, and trios are the groups of 3 that they get in after they've written in their workshop. And one of them might be the one who decides how we're going to share our workout. Okay, are we all going to read out loud? Are we going to switch papers? How are we going to do this? One of them will be the one that will share out the diamond that they voted on as a group, things like that. So everyone has kind of a role here, and no one can hide and not do anything. So the students are also tracking their own progress. They're trying to increase their line length goal to see if they can hit that next goal for themselves and feel like they're making progress. And it's not based on a grade. It's based on that stamina. They also have that choice in like choosing the skill they're going to work on. So if they choose number 3, sentence complexity, they highlight it, and then their trio can help them determine if that actually is an example of a complex sentence. So having them check in with their trio allows them to take risks without being so worried about a grade instantly happening. So their trio has their back, and it kind of becomes like your SEL program at the same time. You teach them how to communicate with each other and support each other, and it allows them to experiment without that fear of a sudden red pen showing up. Once the workshop is started, the captains give them another warm up. It's different. It's basically a little categories question. It's like, what are all the fruits that are red? Or what are the states that start with S? Something like that. And what that does is it gets everybody leaning forward into their notebook and writing something. Every kid loves these questions. Every kid in your class will write down some answers. And I want you to think about that all the time. How can I get my kids to lean in? How can I keep them from slouching back and folding their arms and passively waiting for me to tell them the answer or give them a worksheet? I learned that skill from a boss of mine that I had like a long time ago. I was a social worker. And at the beginning of the meeting, he would have everybody say one thing at the beginning of the meeting. And afterwards, I asked him why he did that. And he said that when you hear your own voice, you are more inclined to use it again. And that stuck with me for so long because an object in motion tends to stay in motion, right? So if they lean in, they stay leaned in. They write their 5 red fruits, their states with S. They're already writing. So just keep writing. But you got to give them that opportunity to do that. So now the kids are far more invested in the workshop. You've got these motivation techniques. I want to move into the 4th change that pulls us out of the workshop, and that is the essay blocks. I don't teach essays in the workshop. I teach them in a 10-day block, and we use what's called a deconstruct method. So I don't stand at the front of the room and say, you're going to write an argument paper and we're going to practice it together. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I would not suggest modeling the writing of it where you are writing in your style, in your voice, at your level, and then you act as if you're struggling when you're not. You know how to write a paper. And then you sort of fake that you need, I don't know what this next one. What should this next line be? Oh, did I do that right? It just doesn't feel authentic, and they know that. And so instead, just flip this around. Again, lean back into the constructivist pedagogy where they are the ones who are going to decide what makes sense and create the definition themselves based on an experience. That experience is that I have student sample essays that are cut into strips, and there are headers, and I put all this mixed up inside a manila envelope, put them in their trios, or you could do 2 trios together. And they have to match up all the sentences in the correct order with the headers. Sometimes I put multiple essays in there so that they really have to work hard to figure out what goes with what. They come up with the order that they think as a group an essay should be written in. That's so powerful because then you can talk about this as a class. If there are groups that have different opinions, you could really dive into why that might be. Their memory of the order of an essay is so much stronger now by using that deconstruct method. Like we pull it apart and we put it back together. And it's really fun. And it's critical thinking. It's positive communication. It makes the writing process feel doable because the essays that they're reading are actual student essays. I use my student essays from the previous year. So my suggestion is that you not just go to ChatGPT and have it write out some essays for you. I like them to feel more authentic, that it really does sound like it's coming from a kid. And the kids can tell that another student has done it. I'll take the ones in the past and I will tweak them some because I need everything to match up, like with the length and everything. So I'll change it a little bit. But they're student essays at a 6th grade level or an 8th grade level. And just telling them those words that this is one of my students' essays from last year. It's so motivating for them. And then once we start writing the essay, it becomes easier for them because the first introduction that they're going to do let's say hooks that we've practiced on for weeks, when I tell them the rules, remember when you write a hook, they can already tell me the rules. I don't have to go over it again. I'm not wasting time on that. We did it. Their hooks are way more higher level than you would have gotten if you just introduced it right there at the essay time. And then we introduce a topic. And so I use a HIT introduction, HIT. So they write their hook and then they introduce and then they write their thesis. And I talk to them how when you did your sentence combining in your workshop, this is where the non-negotiable part comes in. Because they've done the sentence combining, I can then pull on that and say, have you done this before? Have you written a compound and a complex sentence before? Yes, that's what this introductory sentence should look like. Your thesis could be a complex sentence. You already know how to write one of those. Like the biggest part of writing is just reminding them that they already know how to do this, that they've done these skills along the way, and the paragraph feels doable. I make that first paragraph a checkpoint, and they get checks, like points for just writing the introduction, and they also get a separate point for writing their thesis correctly. As long as their thesis is set up correctly, the rest of their paper will flow. So they got to get points for that. They collect their points along the way. So it's the process that earns them the point. It's not just the final output. Then we move into the body paragraphs of that essay, and the fifth and final thing that I changed in my program was studying CER, and I built that into the program. It's not like every once in a while we do CER. We do it any moment that we're not doing an essay or workshop writing. We use that format to answer all questions where they make a claim, and I don't use the race strategy anymore just because state and answer were confusing because they should be one sentence, and that was kind of getting them lost. So I made everything, whether it's literature or nonfiction, a claim, which means you're answering the question fully. And then once they get used to this, you can add in an extra E in there and do your first E could be explained in your own words, and then E for evidence, and then wrap it up with their reasoning. So I teach them directly how to do all that citing evidence and coming up with your reasoning. And we practice it so many times that once we get to that essay, I can just say, you've already done body paragraphs. You know how to do this, right? So it's like in basketball. If we just didn't ever do the drills or go over the plays or practice this and that, when it gets to the game, you realize that all that matters. I mean, LeBron doesn't just show up at a game once a week. They work so hard in between on drills and practice and watching video of other games. Like it's so deep what they do. And by the way, if all of this is sounding like, yes, I want to know more about this, how in the world am I going to do this? I check the link below if you want to consider taking it's a 10 video training on exactly how the program works. So go look for that if you're interested. So workshop has kind of gotten like a bad rap sometimes, but I suggest that we just redefine it for ourselves, that we give it more structure, that we focus on skill building, and we pull the essay out of the workshop into a direct block where they are highly focused on that product. So when you do all this right, the workshop itself can be one of the most powerful parts of your ELA block. So don't look it over. This will give you some clarity, and your thinking will become clearer on how writing actually works and the most effective way to do it. And since there's so many parts to all of this, I put together a planner where I show exactly how I fit everything in for the entire year. And I use something called backwards planning, and I've created like a roadmap to show you how I fit it all in a year. And I'm going to put a link below. You can have my planner for free. So go check that out. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Be sure to follow Beyond the Paragraph wherever you get your podcast, and share this with a teacher bestie. They will love you for it, and so will I. To go deeper and learn more about the structured writing method, go to structuredwritingteacher.com.